The story begins with a group of students suddenly summoned to another world. When they arrive, they are immediately confronted with an army of demons at war with humans. Amid fear, there is a student named Setsu who can defeat the demon army. This happens because he is a former hero who once saved the world. Shortly after, they were taken to the royal palace. The king explained that demons had attacked their kingdom. During such a war 5 years ago, the group of heroes from the other world was destined to face the demons. They began to train to fight and save the world from the threat of demons. However, unlike the others, Setsu looks lazy and lacks enthusiasm when practicing. A trainer named Iruka couldn't just let it go. Iruka told Setsu to return to training even though it had to be done by force. When Setsu resisted, Iruka finally realized that Setsu was a hero who had fought with her. Therefore, her attitude immediately changed drastically, and she became very obedient. After Iruka finds out Setsu's true identity, Setsu is also reunited with his old group. But unlike Iruka, a witch named Tia immediately realizes that it is Setsu. Even though his figure had changed, Tia could recognize Setsu because his magic energy remained the same. When reunited, Setsu told them he had reincarnated into another world by bringing his magic and memories. Then, he was summoned back to that world in a state of war. They found it difficult to believe his story, but they did not doubt it because it was Setsu's words. Setsu asked if Tama was involved in the war this time because he thought only Tama could plan it. On the other hand, the king and his followers planned to attack the demons with the whole army. After learning about this situation, Setsu decided to stop the war again. But this time, he decided to go alone without being accompanied by his friends. Before leaving, Setsu sneaked into the palace warehouse to get the necessary equipment. After the preparations were complete, he said goodbye to his friends and started his journey. A girl named Ruri is the granddaughter of a craft shop owner. After her grandfather died, Ruri was determined to continue the unfinished work done by her grandfather. The task was to return jewelry to the demon's territory, but this task was not easy despite having enough money and supplies. Ruri had difficulty dealing with the beasts that attacked her. Fortunately, Setsu happened to be in the vicinity without hesitation. Setsu immediately saved her from the attack of the beasts. After being saved by Setsu, Ruri begged him to be her bodyguard even though he initially refused. In the end, Setsu agreed to take her to the port city, but when she arrived at the port city, Ruri learned that there were no ships that could sail to the demon continent. When Ruri was looking for a ship, suddenly a knight approached her. The knight intended to take her valuables. Setsu couldn't just let it go. He challenged the knight by questioning his duty license. Of course, the knight didn't have one. Because the population witnessed the incident, the knight was forced to retreat. Because Setsu also had the same goal, they finally decided to go together, so Setsu asked her to rest first so that her energy would recover. While at the inn, Ruri showed a valuable item that had to be sent to the demon continent. It turned out that the item was jewelry Setsu had given to the demon king. A few moments later, the knight who had previously searched for them at the inn, rather than complicate matters, Setsu chose to leave and accelerate his departure schedule. By boarding the ruler of the ocean, whose name was Leviathan, they crossed the sea directly to get to the demon continent. Arriving at the coast of the demon continent, Leviathan faced a giant squid monster. After the monster was defeated, Leviathan turned into a human and was angry because Setsu did not help her during the fight. Ruri asked what they would do with the squid monster. Then Setsu decided to cook it into fried squid. While they were eating squid dishes, Leviathan told Ruri that the package address she was addressing was the Demon Lord's palace. Hearing this surprised Ruri because she did not expect that the items she was carrying belonged to Demon Lord Disaster. Meanwhile, in the village area, the residents complained because giant monsters were looking for fish in their place. In addition, the merchants also stopped coming because of the ongoing war. At that time, Setsu and his group brought squid monsters to the village area. That way, one of the problems the villagers faced could be resolved. While relaxing, Leviathan told Ruri that Setsu was a fairly famous hero. Ruri didn't recognize him, but she already knew about his great achievements. When the villagers were celebrating, the Demon Lord's right-hand man, Brad, suddenly came to the village. In the midst of a very crowded atmosphere, Brad initially thought an army of humans was attacking the village, but after learning that Leviathan was there, Brad told them that the Demon Lord was asked to marry a man named Terran. Terran was a powerful merchant who controlled commodities in various regions. He was also known as the man who proposed a way to maintain peace and stop wars. Hearing this made Setsu decide to cancel her wedding. She suspected Terran might have been involved in the war because both warring parties claimed to have been attacked first. In the past, the demon lord Desu had always fought against various threats, but everything changed when Setsu came to stop the war. At that time, Setsu gave a black brooch as a symbol of peace. Although they had reached a peace agreement, their true peace would only be tested now. Therefore, Desu ordered her followers to remain vigilant. 5 years passed, and the brooch given by Setsu suddenly broke. At the same time, they got news that the troops from the land of humans had returned to attack. Desu felt something was wrong, so she immediately sent some people to Destinia. When Desu ran out of ways to maintain peace, Terran, from the largest trading company, offered to help end the war, but as a condition, Desu must be willing to become his wife. Desu's followers, of course, opposed it, but because Desu had promised to keep the peace, she was forced to accept the offer. On the day of the wedding reception, Terran announced that he would enter into a vow of slavery with the demon lord Disaster. Then, when Terran was about to give the slavery necklace, Setsu suddenly came to his rescue. Setsu intends to cancel the wedding and fight everyone who favors Terran. Besides fighting Terran's army, Setsu also faced the demon who served Tama, but he failed to defeat him and let the demon escape to Tama's place. Desu had actually suspected Tama but didn't expect that Tama would actually do it. As a demon lord, Desu will also help Setsu, but she can't go with him yet because conditions in the demon kingdom are still not safe. Meanwhile, Setsu himself will continue his journey to the beast kingdom. When she first met Setsu, Yuuhi felt that Setsu was scary and unfriendly. But over time, Yuuhi realized that Setsu was actually a good person. When they became teenagers, Yuuhi wanted to attend the same high school as Setsu, but because Setsu was going to an elite school, Yuuhi had to study harder than ever. Unfortunately, when she took the simulated entrance exam, Yuuhi failed the exam. Then, she was teased by some guys to make Yuuhi give up and join them. Because Yuuhi looked uncomfortable, Setsu immediately stopped the bully. After knowing Yuuhi's desire to enter the same high school, Setsu was willing to accompany her and help Yuuhi study to achieve it. In the present, Yuuhi is still trying to catch up with Setsu. She trains harder than the others to help Setsu. Even though Yuuhi's abilities have improved a lot, Iruka tells her that she still has a weakness, which is not having the determination to kill the enemy to save the person she cares about. When Yuuhi was brooding, Tia came to her room to heal the wound on her hand. Tia not only healed the wound but also gave words that made Yuuhi excited again. In the afternoon, Yuuhi talked with Grain. When Yuuhi asked Grain why he fought, Grain replied that he would rather fight others than have to see the people in front of him suffer. These words made Yuuhi determined not to kill anyone. She bravely entered the final training ground to prove she could win without killing her opponent. A few days after that, the king decided to send his knights and troops to invade the demon's territory. They were getting ready to invade enemy territory to protect the country and its people. Setsu and Leviathan were traveling to the land of the half-beast race. During the trip, two demonesses wanted to hitch a ride with them, Elise and her younger sister, Aimer. When Setsu first moved to that world, he had been on an adventure with Elise, and because Setsu often trained her, Elise called him a teacher. When they met again, Setsu asked Elise if she wanted to come along on her trip. Elise wanted to, but she was involved in a serious problem and couldn't do it. After Setsu disappeared, Elise was tasked with hunting dragons in a village. In the village, she meets Aimer, and because her sister Aimer suddenly disappeared, Elise decides to make Aimer her sister. At first, the village looked peaceful and prosperous, but when the dragon came to attack, all the villagers suddenly disappeared without a trace. After hearing her story, Setsu and Leviathan were willing to help Aimer. Without a clear basis, Leviathan said that all the villagers had turned into zombies. She also suspected that sea creatures might be the culprit. The conjecture was considered unreasonable. Aimer could also immediately know if sea creatures were infiltrating her village. Meanwhile, Setsu thought that the disappearance of the villagers was caused by aliens. However, after learning that dragons attacked the village because they were provoked by large magic, Setsu realized that the disappearance of the villagers might be caused by teleportation magic. Performing teleportation magic takes years because only 2 people move to the village. Aimer is suspected of being the culprit. Setsu's guess was correct. Aimer was a dragon disguised as a human and had something to do with the missing villagers. Setsu and Leviathan worked together against the dragon, but when the dragon was weakened, Elise made a final attack and defeated it. In one of the regions on the Beastman continent, there is a half-cat human named Shireniko who is quite popular, thanks to her hard work. Shireniko is favored by the locals and often gets a lot of food from them. At that time, she lived alone with her sister Mineko. Due to an illness, Mineko could only depend on her sister, while Shire Nico faithfully cared for her sister and always hoped to cure her illness. One day, Setsu and Leviathan arrive at the Beastman continent. They encounter a problem because no ship can take them. But if they waited one day, there would definitely be a ship that could depart. Therefore, Setsu and Leviathan decided to stay there overnight. At the same time, Shire Nico had just gotten a job offer from the innkeeper, and even though it was dangerous, she dared to take the job to get money to buy her sister medicine. When Setsu and Leviathan were resting secretly, Shire Nico sneaked into her room and tried to attack Setsu using her long claws. But her attack failed because Setsu's ability was much stronger than Hersher's. In the end, Shire Nico is defeated by Setsu with a very hard slap. When Setsu noticed her, she realized a slight curse inside her body. After understanding the situation, Setsu took Shire Nico back to her home and removed the curse's source by using the devouring sword. But removing the curse takes so long that she can't do anything when someone attacks her. Fortunately, Leviathan is always by Setsu's side. She fights back while looking for information about the plan she is planning. At first, Kiroenu is reluctant to provide information, but after being forced, he finally admitted that he was helping Tama to destroy all the races in the world. In the past, Setsu had dueled against the princess of the Beast Kingdom. The duel was the pride of the Beastmen. Although Setsu was the world's savior hero, Roa wouldn't acknowledge him if she couldn't beat him in a duel. In the present time, the bigwigs in the human beast kingdom are discussing their future plans. Some parties wanted to start a war against the human kingdom, while others wanted to keep the citizens safe. At the same time, Setsu had arrived there. However, despite mentioning that he was an old friend of the king, the guards did not allow him to enter. Fortunately, Roa noticed his presence. Even though his appearance had changed somewhat, Roa could still distinguish Setsu from the smell and eve of his presence. After that, he told King Regulus that Tama was the mastermind behind all this. After hearing the news, Regulus worried that Tama would attack his kingdom. Setsu didn't object to the proposal to go with Roa, but their army captain, Roga, strongly opposed it. Roga wanted to get engaged to Roa so he would not allow Setsu to take Roa away. To solve this problem, they decided to solve it by dueling. Roga knew he could not defeat Setsu, but he felt he had a chance because he had the curse symbol. The next day, Setsu and Roga began to duel. Since the beginning of the fight, Roga had exerted all his strength. But because Setsu overcame all his attacks, Roga had no choice but to use the curse symbol. When the curse was active, Roga's strength increased rapidly, but simultaneously, he could not control his body. Setsu planned to remove the curse, but he could not because Tama thwarted his plans from a distance. When she was first summoned to the other world, Setsu initially did not agree to fight for someone else's country. However, after understanding the situation, she continued to train to increase his strength so that he could survive. After his strength was sufficient, he traveled to stop the war. Meanwhile, Tama does not have Setsu's courage and strength, but he promises to become stronger to fight with him. However, their path was very different. Setsu tried to unite the kings, while Tama used all his abilities to eradicate all enemies on the battlefield. To make it happen, he did not hesitate to kill surrendered enemies. After successfully attacking one of the demon's fortresses, Tama finds a cursed necklace. Because of the whispering sound of the necklace, he took it even though he didn't want to do it at first. When Tama returned to the battlefield, he received an emergency message saying they had called for a truce. All troops were asked to retreat because the envoys would soon pass. Seeing Setsu together with the envoys surprised Tama. He was also speechless when Setsu received much praise for successfully uniting the three countries. In the evening, Tama intended to keep their promise. Because the world was at peace, he invited Setsu to return to his home world together. But Setsu has a different view. He prefers to stay in that world to see more sights that have never been seen before. Setsu's words hurt Tama, and he could not control his emotions because he held the cursed gem. In the end, Tama attacked Setsu and added followers to realize his wishes. The human kingdom's army was approaching the demon continent. Tia felt Tama's magic energy from a distance, but she felt helpless and could only prepare herself for battle. Despite the difficult situation, Yuuhi still believed in Setsu. They tried to buy time until Setsu arrived at the place in the hope of preventing a futile battle. However, even though they tried to avoid conflict, the war in the demon country was avoided. The troops from both sides attacked each other with full force. Yuyuhi felt indecisive because she didn't want to kill a defenseless enemy, and this caused a dispute with her friends. Meanwhile, Tama's followers began to move. They summoned the warrior Jura and were controlled by the monster controller. The monster controller had previously traveled with Elise, and now Elise was controlled by her power to fight the human kingdom's army. She was a monster controller who could summon various monsters using only his blood. He overwhelmed Iruka's group because they had to fight several monsters summoned simultaneously. Fortunately, Yuyuhi was nearby. She had an effective attack to paralyze the monsters. After defeating all the monsters, Iruka immediately stabbed her demon organ. After being hit by the attack, she shouldn't have survived. But because her body had undergone many modifications, she could still survive even though her demon organ had been hit. Not only that, his magic energy also increased beyond her limit, so he could unite with a huge summoned creature. Yuyuhi and the others were no longer able to fight him. When they were about to surrender, suddenly Elise realized and attacked him from behind. With Elise's help, he was finally defeated. While the war was still ongoing, Setsu immediately approached his friends. He would face the enemy alone so that Yuyuhi and the others could retreat to a safe place. When he noticed the magic energy, Setsu realized it was the enemy he had faced at Desazu's place. Shire Nico and Mainko were dealing with Kuroinu, but Kuroinu still hasn't given up and started using his strength beyond the limit. Not to be outdone, Shire Nico and Mainko also unite their bodies and strength to defeat Kuroinu. When the Demon Kingdom troops are in trouble, reinforcements from the Beastman Kingdom come to help them. Roa faces an iron-bodied man named Bildos. Because his body is very hard, his attacks are difficult to penetrate and even hurt himself. In addition, Bildos can control his body fully by turning it into metal. As a result, Roa has difficulty attacking and is instead hit directly by him. As a descendant of the Beast King, Roa risks her own life to kill the enemy when threatened. Thus, no matter how hard the opponent's defense is, she can still destroy it. At the same time, Setsu was still fighting Kajero. As a hero, Setsu must be stronger than him, so he told Kajero to surrender. Because he was too lazy to fight him, Kajero did not want to obey him and instead used a move that risked his life to increase his own strength. This made Setsu have to fight him with the strength of a real hero. After all his followers were defeated, Tama came to the Demon King's palace alone. He also defeated Desaz and Leviathan and threatened to kill them both. Setsu wouldn't let him do it, so he immediately followed to the palace to stop him. But Tama couldn't be stopped by words, so Setsu attacked first. They fought using their respective weapons and powerful magic energy. Tama continued to retaliate without caring about the surroundings, making the surrounding buildings fall apart. To deal with Tama, Setsu didn't just rely on his weapons. He waited when Tama was off guard and then attacked using his physical strength. Tama felt that fighting like that was a waste of time, so he used his sacred weapon to end the fight immediately. But it was not as easy as he thought, even though his weapon was deadly. Setsu was difficult to defeat because he had a weapon to overcome every attack. Because he always fought alone, Tama felt lonely. Therefore, when Setsu's friends gathered to give support, Tama felt jealous and could not control his own anger. Using enormous curse energy, Tama planned to attack them, but Setsu always hindered him until he made Tama angry and possessed by darkness. With that much energy, Tama managed to knock Setsu down. For a moment, he felt he had won, but it turned out that Setsu could still turn things around so easily. In the end, Setsu managed to devour all the curses and restore Tama's common sense. This way, Tama was no longer a threat. But because Tama had done something unforgivable, he had to make amends by sending the students to their home world. Thus, he would lose his magic energy and become an ordinary person. After that, Setsu and Tama separated to continue their respective journeys.